Allahu, 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 Allah. Allahu, 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 Allah.
Are there any sisters that have any questions? I honestly want to just everyone to feel comfortable. You can ask anything. You know, Hanif said it very clearly. If there's any questions that you might have had as a youngster, or even the elders have some questions as well. I know that a lot of times the elders complain that there's not enough young people in the masjid. You wonder why? And the youngsters say, oh, we don't come to the masjid because of the elders. You know? So we have a little issue. So we have a sister that would like to ask a question, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. This question could be open to any one of the speakers. As was mentioned during the talks, that we need to find some sort of balance in our lives, balancing our professional lives and balancing our Islamic lives. How do you recommend for young people of today who are pursuing their professional careers, they graduate college, they get into these full-time jobs, but also want to pursue some Islamic knowledge as well? How do you recommend that in the midst of all this chaos of like family life and professional life, do they fit in these trying to learn Islamic knowledge to fit that into our lives as well?
Jazakallah khairan.
So this is a good question. Actually, I have, there's 2 clips I put up on my YouTube page in the last week called, actually there's 3, success and spirituality. So you can check it out. This is a shameless plug, but it's good at the Suhaib Web YouTube page. But that's why I recorded those, because I get that question so much from people. So the first is, in Boston, I have around 10 students. All of them are what would be considered professionals. So what I would say is, first of all, don't walk into that thinking you're going to be like a full-time madrasa student. You're not. It can't happen. You're not going to be like someone who said and used to memorize Quran 6 hours a day and have a job. Like, that's why we did it when we were younger and we had our father's debit card, in our wallet. The second thing is that doesn't mean that you can achieve those goals, but it needs to be like a longer process. So I sit with those people twice a week for 2 hours each time. And we go through core subjects. And that's how you have to do it. Ibn Hisham, he wrote his book called Qatran Nada wa Balla Sada, which means basically slow dripping water. And he said knowledge is like slow dripping water. It just doesn't come like, right? So be consistent, find a qualified person. Find someone who's not trying to bring you into their cult or to their philosophy, but just wants to teach you deen. That's another problem we have in America. We have more flavors than Ben and Jerry's. And it's bad. And what happens is people fall into cults, especially women. Women get intimidated and pushed into cults. It just happens a lot. So I would look for someone that is teaching you deen, and not necessarily. And how do you recognize that? They're not telling you, oh, hate this sheikh, hate this group, hate this sheikh, don't be with this group. These people are evil. Like, who are you talking? I'm talking about Muslims. What? Right? So you need to be very careful. So I would say be consistent. A few times, Aisha said that the most beloved, from the Prophet, the most beloved deeds to Allah were those that were done walau aqal, if they were consistently, even if they were little. So have a set, and that's the beauty of having a sheikh who has studied before with other scholars, because they're going to have the curriculum in their mind. They know what they're supposed to teach. Most of us had to memorize a lot of that stuff. And they'll be able to walk you through that process. Then you need to be really patient. It's like dieting, it's like working out. It doesn't come over time, and also what you do outside plays a major role. So we used to say if you study with the sheikh for 4 hours a week, then you should study at home for 8 hours. What you do outside also is going to contribute to that. So finding qualified people that are not in a cult, which is hard, seriously. Number 2 is consistency. Number 3 is understanding you're not a madrasa student in the full-time sense of the word. You're a part-time student, so have part-time goals. And the last thing, what Sheikh Muhammad Mahdi taught me, he was from Jazair, I used to read Jami' Jawami' with him, was that always try to do good. A lot of times we think that learning is the goal. Learning actually is a means. Learning is the bridge to do more good deeds. And that's why when Jibreel would come to the Prophet in Ramadan, the Prophet would become more generous, because the fruit of his knowledge was generosity, was to do something good. So as you're learning, make sure that you're doing some good in the community as well, inshallah. And I'm actually going to put up a video soon, that's going to talk about what are the core subject matters every Muslim in America should know. What are those core subjects that you have to know? Right? We called, what the Malikis called, actually they called them fardu ain. They call them individual obligations, and all of our books in the Maliki madhab actually start by mentioning them, listing them. These are things every single yajib ala al-mukallifi and ya'lam kada. Every responsible person has to know the following things. So I'm actually going to put that out soon as well, inshallah.
Jazakallah khairan. You know, one of the things that I want to ask, Imam Ibrahim mentioned brotherhood is built on faith. So I want to ask Brother Hanif to kind of expand on brotherhood being built upon faith, because a lot of times you have, whether it's non-Muslims, they're used to a different type of brotherhood, right? And you were mentioning to me, the story, and you can share about the guys in Memphis and what they mentioned to you. And if you can share that a little bit. And their idea of brotherhood is different, and our idea of brotherhood is based on faith, which Imam Ibrahim was mentioned. So if you can expand on that for us, inshallah.
Shukran. Basically, last week I received a very interesting call from Memphis, and I just don't service the mu'minun and the Muslimin. We service everybody. So I got a call from a young man, Abdurrahman, who we've been working on the community there in Memphis, the unfortunate people there. And this particular time, he texted me and said, I want to call you, and I'm going to have someone else on the line. I said, oh, sure. So he had a Memphis city policeman who's a Muslim on the line, and he had a Pyru captain, which is a Crip captain, like the Crips and Bloods, on the phone. So he said, Hanif, he said, I'm going to let such and such speak to you. And I said, okay, let him talk. And he was delivering his invitation to me to come down there. And he said, you want to come down here and you want to have peace within a community that is very, very intense? He said the last person that came down here was killed, that tried to have peace. Because of they was going to involve in our money. So we got rid of him. And he was talking, and then Abdurrahman, who was the liaison, said, Hanif, are you still there? I said, yeah, I'm here. Is he done speaking? I said, let me explain something to you, brother. I said, you do know that I'm a Muslim, right? I said, I'm a lion and I have a lion's heart. Even if something was to happen to me like that, an entire community will be there at Memphis' threshold. And he said, brother, get him here right now. This is what we needed to hear. The point is, our brotherhood and their brotherhood, that's a test to me to say, oh yeah, I don't want to go down there. I'm going to have my life in danger. He was waiting to hear that. The idea of brotherhood is having my good and my strength come through you. Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam did something very, very interesting. After he asked Allah Azza wa Jalla for all of these things, and I'm going to wrap this up with this sentence. He asked Allah Azza wa Jalla for all of these things after he performed miracles at the burning bush. He said, appoint for me a minister from my family, Harun wa akhi, Harun my brother, ashdud bihi azri, and make me stronger through him. My strength has to come from you. We're talking about one of the anbiyas of Allah Azza wa Jalla. Don't lose me here. One of the 5 ulul azm. And make me stronger through him. This is the brotherhood. So that's very, very important. And I am going down to Memphis. And they're preparing for me. And they said, listen, we got everything laid out for you. We just don't want no cameras here. I said, how you want me to come? Suit, V-neck, T-shirt, jeans, sneakers, shoes. And he said, I'm getting so emotional. This is the non-Muslim speaking. I'm getting so emotional from hearing you. I want to come to Virginia, get on a plane with you and ride down here just so we could talk on a plane. This is how we service. So he's my brother too. He just needs some tweaking here and there, some things he doesn't know.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Thank you for coming. I have a question, calming question. I don't know how you want to approach this. I'm also a Weaver convert for 5 years. I was raised mostly in a Christian Catholic household. And living in South Florida, and especially in Miami, when you convert to Islam is very, I consider also racism, because they look at you and they see you as oppressed. So for all the sisters out here who are raising young women from other cultures and bringing them in this American Western society, I would like to see the sisters come out more with their daughters so they can see them, that we're not oppressed. We're the ones who run the house, pretty much. We're the teachers of our children, our husbands. So how can you brothers who are seeing more, talking more out to the public, to reach out to the sisters to come out and speak out for American women to be more open, because we're considered also being like racism of black and whites here in America. We're also oppressed because they think we're hiding behind our scarves, which we're not.
I'm just going to comment also on my brother's question. I was actually married to an African-American woman for some time, and Islah, with respect to the answer, is part of it, but also, calling people to account for mistakes. So, for example, in Boston, if in our masjid someone was to use the N-word, they'd be fired, because you got to go. It's not going to be, there's Islah, but also Islah came also at times with ta'deeb, ta'zirat, and even hudud. So, again, his question is rooted in our inability to have institutional standards. And it's very difficult to even find, I'm not talking about here, someone to complain to. Is there like a form I can fill out? Sexual harassment in the Muslim community is something that's not talked about. We had a situation in California where an imam had been charged and found guilty of sexually harassing 18 young girls. And families just had nowhere to go and report properly. And 501c3s, nonprofits, actually are subjected to more stringent employment at times standards than those who are for profit. So it's something to think about. So I was someone who came up kind of in an urban background. It's the Piru are actually Bloods, not Crips. I was a Piru 456 from Pomona. You're from Fresno, so you know what's up. Crenshaw Saturday nights. And it's not something I'm proud of, but just when you said Pyro Crip, I was like, what? I almost grabbed something, just out of reflex. But then I started cramping and I couldn't continue. But I think what I realized being married to a black woman was, number one, that race is talked about almost every day. And that's something that I had never really been able to appreciate. And she actually told me that we are a community, and if I'm saying something wrong, forgive me for saying that, basically is haunted by a racial superstructure that is rooted in injustice historically when you talk about the genetic makeup of our community, and we are extremely sensitive to race. And if I'm wrong, I'm white, so check me. No, it's not funny. It's having that on. I'm just quoting what her mother told me one morning. And it was every morning there was, whether it was Rodney King, whether it was Rosa Parks, whether it was Nat Turner. I mean, it was a very interesting experience for me. And then to find converts, most of us, if Abraham is the spiritual father of Muslims, For American Muslim converts, Malcolm is our spiritual father. Malcolm is our Abraham. And I don't think people appreciate, especially if you grew up in the 90s and you know what Illmatic is 20 years old, you're able to appreciate the power of the social message of Malcolm, which is rooted in black liberation. That's what his philosophy was, and he didn't change at the end, by the way. That's what people want us to believe. Now, coming into 2014, when you find a predominant Sunni Muslim community who basically has become apathetic to the struggles of black Americans. And yesterday, in Boston, we said a special prayer for Michael Brown and his family. And immediately the reaction was, are you allowed to pray for a kafir? Can you pray for a non-Muslim? There's all these issues about can you pray for, and one of our black brothers was like, you are people who have no heart, man. Like, you have no soul. But then when it comes to Gaza, what Hanif said, you're all up in arms. The collective conscience of the Muslims is suddenly shifted to one area and forgets other areas. So I would say that there are two other points to this question. Number one is Islah, yes. But Islah comes with shurut, as mentioned. But number one is we need to appreciate the struggles of the black community historically in America and understand that some of the civil rights challenges that Muslims, human rights challenges, that Malcolm liked that word better, human rights challenges that Muslims are faced with now, the solutions were solved, done, cooked, answered, prepared, and eaten by the black community 40 to 50 years ago. And this is not to appeal to racism. It's just to say, it's just historical reality. And that's why, for example, and Imam Ibrahim can talk about this, some of the identity issues that the Sunni Muslim community, immigrant, and I say that with respect, and convert insecure Muslim community are trying to deal with were answered by Imam Dabidi Muhammad 30 years ago. Solved, answered. But we haven't taken the time to look into that community. We're not aware of that community because we're not feeling the pulse of that community. So I think we need to, and our sister, obviously, single mothers, like, why don't we have a day recognizing single mothers? The Prophet, his mom was a single mother. Ismail, his mom was a single mother. Bukhari, single mother. Shafi, single mother. Ahmed ibn Hanbal, single mother. Most of the great imams, Salahuddin Ayyubi, single mother. So the Prophet in Islam would take some of the most challenged at a societal level and through Islam give them an incredible sense of utility that actually caused them to produce leaders of communities despite the odds. So I think that, we need to have days that recognize, like we named our institute Ella Collins. No one even knows who Ella Collins is. Ella Collins' house is in Boston. Ella Collins is the sister of Malcolm. She's the one who sent Malcolm to Hajj. And everyone's like, who's Ella Collins? Like, you named your institute after a kafir? I was like, no, Ella Collins was Muslim before Malcolm was Muslim, man. We're not aware of our own historical presence in America, and then we have trouble trying to give our children identities in this country where we have multiple players from John Coltrane, right, to Ella, to Malcolm, you name it, Muhammad Ali, his wife, you name it, we have iconic figures, Lupe, iconic figures in our community that our young people can find heritage in, rooted in their American identity. So the first part of that is just like collective appreciation. And that goes also to the immigrant community. Like never say to a Bengali brother, you're from Eastern Pakistan. Like never say that, right? You'd be like, Ula kapata. I know what you're gonna say to me if I say that, right? There has to be recognition culturally, and that's a challenge. The white American convert, the loneliness, the social suicide that we commit at times, just to survive, right? Because they don't have, even within their own indigenous community, the numbers. You ask most white American Muslims and Latino American Muslims, where do you spend Eid? They spend it alone. We're not in touch with each other culturally. So I think number one is like cultural awareness. The third thing is that there needs to be policies and institutions where if people say things like this or do things like this, it's been real peace. Like after an investigation, after things have been looked into, that person may need to go. And we need to set that up. As far as her issue, it goes back to the same thing. The patriarchy that's found in classical Muslim communities, as well as some of the cultural articulations of Islam, has to be spoken about by the imams and the leadership. That's why the first thing I ever did when I was still in my early 20s was Mothers of Believers. I did that for my daughter. Right? I recorded a series of CDs on the wives of the Prophet ﷺ almost 13 years ago because I had a daughter and I was worried that there are very little examples for her to find out there. So those examples, and we need female scholarship. I know in Boston we have 130 students, 60 of them are women. In Azhar, when I was studying in Azhar, 12,000 of the students in the College of Islamic Law are women. So we need to also promote female scholarship, inshallah, in the community. Barakallahu feekum.
Jazakallah khairan, Imam Sahib. I think the sister had a question. And I hope the Imams have been thorough in answering the sister's question as well, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Pleased to meet Brother Imam Shuaib. Alhamdulillah. Suhaib.
It's
Suhaib. I watch you all the time on YouTube. My question is, earlier you made beautiful statements. I was wondering, what is your take on how do you deal with a community that wants to follow one way of Islam due to the fact that they only follow the ideology of Arabia, Saudi Arabia, and they just want to keep us in that same, knowing that we have, Islam is vast, and we have, Allah blessed us with the 4 major imams, but yet we are stuck to just follow one way. I have another question. Sorry.
Can I do one ask that one after I answer?
Okay.
So actually we had 93 imams. We didn't just have 4. Those are 4 that made it historically, but there are actually 93 imams. The first day I went to class for iftah when I was doing my stuff as a mufti. I don't use that term because I don't feel qualified enough. But Dr. Muhammad Wissam, we were writing fatwa, and I asked him, what madhab do you follow? He's like, I use 93 madhabs. I was like, what the heck? How do you do that? So there are actually around 93 imams. Like Imam Bukhari had a madhab, Sufyan al-Thawri had a madhab. So what you have to do, sister, is you have to make sure America is a pluralistic country, right? It's a dynamic, fast-paced, culturally fluid, massively impressive society that has a lot of good and a lot of bad. One way very rarely works here. Now, there are certain fundamentals that don't change, like our faith in God, our belief in the Prophet, 5 prayers, hijab, those kind of things are fixed. But then the vast majority of Islam is rooted in scholarly opinion, almost 96% of it. That's where you need to find a place where you feel comfortable and you feel that's best for your iman. I mean, that's what's terrifying now. Younger generations of American Muslims and older generations like my brother here talked about like leaving masajid. Man, it takes a lot to make you leave a mosque. Like that's an incredibly draining, depressing experience, right? So, and what we're seeing now is younger generations are reinventing masajid, reopening masajid, called the third space or unmosque or whatever they call it, simply because the existing institutions don't fit really their cultural needs and where they are emotionally. So I would encourage you, if you cannot find a place, create a place. And be prepared to face a lot of, I would say, adversity. But the truth always came with adversity. Like it didn't, the Prophet was asked, who was the most tested person? He said, me. The Prophet was the most tested. And oftentimes that test, we assume it's just against kufr, but also it's against irresponsible conservatism in our communities. It's a two-sided issue, liberalism and irrational conservatism. The Muslim will always find himself in between those. So I would try to work for change by finding collective mass, collective group of people who agree that there's like a general issue. And number 2 is try to work with existing entities, try to reinvest in institutions. And if that's not happening, then you have to do what's best for your own faith and the faith of your generation. And that's make that call,
Or Brother Hanif? William? Sorry. Earlier, you made a statement. I agree with you to a certain extent, where you mentioned that an atheist, an atheist has the right to be atheist, Christian, Jew, and still live next door to us without any problem, in peace, which, alhamdulillah, I agree. But I think it needs to be, you need to explain it a little more. What do we do as Muslims? Do we just not offer them the gift of life, which is Islam? Do we not, dawah? How do we live and not, you understand what I'm trying to ask?
Yeah, I understand you completely. And I think that that's a great follow-up to try to get clarity. This is very important for, you have to hold your leaders accountable for what they say. So when you walk out of here, it's crystal clear clarity. So that's very good. So we'll let the Holy Quran answer your question, not me. Allah Azza wa Jalla says to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, which basically what you're saying, he says, فَذَكِّرْ إِنَّمَا أَنْتَ مُذَكِّرْ. Basically, and the gist is, you're only there to remind the people. Right? So yes, you have a duty of being kind to them, and and it goes back to what also Imam Suhaib was saying, is the fact that this you don't want to be hard with it. You want to take the easy road, and you put yourself in, and we don't do this. We don't put, and basically what everybody's saying, we don't put our feet in the footprints of Rasulullah Akram sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And you say, just from your knowledge and your love for him, because obviously you love him, or you wouldn't be here. Alhamdulillah, none of us would be. You say, what would he do in a situation like this? We're not going to compromise anything, but he was only sent as a reminder. Furthermore, when Rasulullah Akram sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when he became very, very distraught about making sure that he was delivering the message to the people at that time. So Allah Azza wa Jalla sent down the first part of Surah Taha, مَا أَنزَلْنَا عَلَيْكَ الْقُرْآنَ لِتَشْقَى. I did not send down this Quran upon you to make you distressful. So we told him basically relax, because he was so concerned about giving the message to the people. But once you remind them, well, alhamdulillah, but you still have to, Muslims, so that yes, they live in peace. So that's a very, very good question. Was that clear enough for you? Shukran Jaleel, barakallahu ta'ala feek.
The brothers are quiet. And any questions, Marvin?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum
I want
assalam.
to thank you guys for taking the time out. It was a great dialogue for all the speakers. So my question is both a personal one and a sensitive one. So I came to Islam 3 years ago, and when I came to Islam, of course, all the brothers were welcoming, and they gave me all the information to learn more about Islam. And so as you grow as a convert, they then, after years, tell you it's time for you to get married. So now here's the personal part. I live in a majority Indian community. So of course, statistically, the person that I decide I want to marry happens to be Indian. But the problem is that the family doesn't accept black people. And so the hard part about it is you can, let's say you come into Islam and they teach you all these right things to do, but then when you see a wrong thing, then it starts to confuse you. And so I'm not sure what to do. Is it like, okay, this is just how it is, so you should try to find someone just like me, so I have to go to like a black community or marry a non-Christian, a non-Muslim, or what do you do in a situation like this? And then the sensitive part is that one of the parents is here today. So that's the sensitive part.
Subhanallah.
I mean, no, but it's not funny. It's heartbreaking. I mean, in the fact that you go into church and marry anybody. You go into synagogue and basically, unless you're in Israel and not Ethiopian, marry anybody. But in the church, in the name of kufr, a black man can marry an Indian woman. In the Muslim community, in the name of truth, a black man can't marry anybody. And what that means is that we are all collectively hypocrites. And until we approach it that way, I mean, it might be a personal opinion based on other issues outside of race or color. But if it's rooted in race or color, then there is a fundamental flaw with our tawheed. The oneness of God enhances what Imam Ibrahim mentioned, the oneness of humanity. And I suffered the same crisis. I grew up around black people, so I was always attracted to black women. And when I came into the Muslim community, I was going to the black mosque to try to take care of business, man. And I remember even within that community being told, you know, we are children of the first resurrection. We don't really like the children of Dr. Yaqub. And I said, man, who the heck is Dr. Yaqub? Yaqub is a prophet. They're like, no, he lived in an island. And I was like, oh, man, you still got that issue. And then go back to the other community and say, are there any African-American sisters here? And they're like, well, brother, why would you want to marry a black woman? You're white. I was like, what's wrong with us? Like, did I become a kafir? Like this is not Islam. So what I've decided to do is just be really intolerant. You know, Big Daddy Kane had a song, Erase Racism. And I just think we need to be intolerant of that. And if that parent is here, I know you're probably mad, but you should be mad at yourself. You shouldn't be mad at him. He's calling for his haqq. He's not calling for something wrong. He's not saying, and he's so respectful that he's not, let's be honest, he's not trying to holler at your daughter in the parking lot. He's not trying to Tinder her on his Tinder. You know what Tinder is, you're in trouble. App. I can tell how I know about it. But the reality is, as a young, dignified, honorable man, you know, he's saying, this is what I'm asking for. And I respect you. You know, it was my daughter, and she wasn't young. She liked you. I don't have an issue with it. But it's just hypocrisy. And to think that people of a Desi background, after what the British did to you, could have any semblance of racism in your hearts. I mean, they have you using Fair and Lovely. They have you whitening your skin. No, I'm saying that's bad, right? And I don't know why you're laughing. It's something I would be ashamed of, right? In Egypt, they have a cream called Be White Cream. There is no more beautiful woman in the world than a Nubian woman from the land of Kush. Those of us before Muslim who read all that stuff. Now Kush is something else, unfortunately. Now you can laugh about that. But it's hypocrisy. And when we have, this is a handsome brother, mashallah, right? He's a handsome man. And when he, just imagine the dilemma of a convert. That, as you said, you buy into the Islam 101 pamphlet, Islam is peace, it's one community, God is one, Muhammad is one. You come in there like, yeah! And then you try to get married, and we're not stupid. And we start to figure it out. Like, I've actually had people tell me, you know, you're not our kind of white. If the black convert is subjected to explicit racism, the white convert is subjected to an implicit sick relationship because certain communities idealize whiteism to the point that they have defined it in a utopic vision. And when the white convert doesn't meet those utopic standards, he's not white anymore. It's freaky. So they'll love him as a poster boy, but they're not going to love him as a son-in-law. And we go through like a sense of depression. Then the fact remains that converts till now, because we hate each other in the name of Salafism, which I personally don't agree with, Sufism, whatever, the converts ain't built nothing. And I'm using that type of language. We have no institutions to support each other. We have no institutions to take care of our sisters. Imam W.D. Muhammad's community had it. Before him, the nation had it. After that, the Dar, we know what happened between the Dar and others. There were some fights and Bilal got shot in Harlem. All of us know the history. But we have nothing to support you. And that has to change. The convert Muslim community needs to begin to start donating 10, 100, 500, whatever they can a month into a pot to create an institution where we can find some sense of dignity. You're humiliating yourself to get married. You and I could go to the club tonight and make it happen, huh? We know. Some of these old timers put on some Al Green, Luther, whatever, make it happen. We come into the Muslim community and are shamed by our piety. Or we could go into the club and get what we want by being evil. Just the fact that we hold on to Islam is proof that God exists after what we go through. We walk into certain communities. So this is an issue. And I would say to that mother or father that's here, like, you need to fear Allah. Like, just fear Allah. And then ask yourself, like, what would Allah want you to do? And there's the answer. Because he's a good dude, man. Take care of business. I'll write the aqd. But this here, I'm just intolerable to it. My first wife, my children are Malaysian and white. The racism that they were subjected to in the American Muslim community was such, I sent them back to Malaysia. Because people were like, what are you? Your eyes are like David Carradine. Your skin is like Keira Knightley. Like, what are you? And my daughter, at the age of 4, starts to question her own racial identity at 4 years old. Not in the public school system, in private Muslim schools. So I said to my ex-wife, look, we're getting them out of here, man. And they went to Malaysia, and they're just Malay. Nobody trips. So may Allah give you patience. Remember what the Prophet said. You put the sun in my right hand, the moon in my left hand, I'm not leaving it. You're not Muslim for people. You're Muslim for Allah. And this is a tough one, man. And then you take into what we heard tonight about the subliminal conscious of black Americans. And it's incredible that they are able to maintain any connection to our communities. Just any. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala strengthen you. But I just tell the parents, fear Allah. Fear Allah, at least give him a chance. Give the brother a chance, man. What's going to happen is you'll find some hot Desi doctor who will be the most secular shaitan in your life. You'll marry your daughter to him and it will be a disaster. And I'm not saying all Desi brothers are like that. But we see this record play out over and over again. Good brothers come, even good Desi brothers come who aren't Dr. Sahibs and engineers. And parents say no. And they find Shah Rukh Khan, and it's more like Shah Rukh Shaitan. And their life is ruined. It's a true thing. So I would just say to the parent, you just need to fear Allah. Pray 2 rakat, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what you should do. Istikhara. And see where it takes you, inshallah. Barakallahu feekum.
Takbir. Thank you. Sister Khalila wanted to address that as well.
Yes, I do.
Sister Khalila Ali is the ex-wife of Muhammad Ali, and I don't box.
I don't box either. Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I just want to answer to the sister. When I came up in the Nation of Islam, I was with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and I know about the Yaqub and the whole bit. But somehow, in my mother and father's home, under our roof, we was not taught individualities. We was taught to respect all races, all nations, all colors. When it comes to love, you trust your love for that person. You don't have color. My twin daughters, one of them, Rashida, called me up on the phone, and this guy named Bob asked me for my daughter's hand in marriage. He's an Italian, Bob. And I said, do you love her, Bob? He said, yes, I do. He said, do you accept her as being a Muslim, Bob? He said, yes, I do. I said, well, then you get married, Bob. And I said, yes. If Allah is meant for you two to love each other, you get married. Yes, you can have a hand in marriage. They have 2 young boys now. Bob did his shahada. That really tripped me out. So I was really thankful to Allah that he came along. And it's not Your color has nothing to do with anything. It's the way you carry yourself and what's in your heart. It's nothing about color. If you keep looking at color, you're going to have a problem. When you're in this Al-Islam, you look at the heart and the mind. Didn't Prophet Muhammad teach us anything? He gave us this freedom way 1,400 years ago. And my other twin daughter, she married an Irishman. He called me from Ireland asking for her hand in marriage. Simply the fact that he gave me the benefit of the doubt to even ask me, I was happy for that because it's like I'm a little old-fashioned. So I was thankful for that. These boys, these men, are good husbands and good fathers to my children. And we love them, and we don't see the color. I still don't see it. And the whole family, entire family love us. So if you would take the idea of color and you put it in your mind, then you're going to have a problem. You're supposed to kill all that. That's what Al-Islam is about. It's about peace, love, and being human. That's all it is, all I got to say. If you got a problem, if you talk to this man and you love this man and you guys can get along and you guys have the same thinking mode, then that's it. You don't have to ask anybody about anything. If the mother-in-laws or father-in-laws don't accept it, that's their problem. Let them deal with that. Just go with love, Allah. That's all you need. That's all I got to say. Thank you. I married a Puerto Rican, by the way. Yeah. Nice, young, wonderful man. 2 pretty daughters. He passed away now, but thank God he was a Muslim. He became Muslim. So don't think about color. Don't think about, just learning each other's culture, learn each other's language. You know, be a part of one another. You become one. When you have that person, you become one. There's not 2 individuals anymore. That's all I got to say.
Allahu, 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 Allah, Allah.